Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Feed Your Soul with Kim podcast. Today we have a friend here, and her name is Carrie Helms. And Carrie is a career purpose coach. She empowers women on a mission to swap overwhelm and frustration with clarity and confidence. You get clear on your heck yes and your heck no to create joy, meaning, and freedom in your work. Um, Carrie, for those of you that can't see who are on the podcast, she's got a beautiful background of all the forests. So I think we're on a mission to be a little enchanted today. And her cat comes in and out. So Carrie, why don't you tell us more about you?
So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much
Mm,
for inviting me to come onto your podcast, Kim. I've listened to some of your segments and I was like, yes, bring me on.
hey.
It's just, I love this whole concept.
Hmm.
And so, like you said, I'm really about helping women who are on a mission to find their heck yes and their hell no. Because when we know it's an inside out world, right? And so when we know what lights us up, and where our boundaries are, then we're able to so much more clearly express to others. I like to say it's kind of like dating. Why would you put up with certain behaviors in your life, right? Why wouldn't we create the ability to say, I
Yeah.
like that, I don't like that, I won't have any more of that in my life?
Wow. I like all of that. And for those of you who don't know, when we do a podcast, we talk in advance about some areas that we want to go in. And I am loving on what Carrie's talking about because we've been talking in the month of March, International Women's Day. We talked a lot about boundaries. And I think we're going to go into a deeper dive into that today. So I'm super excited about that. So, Carrie, when we talk about this thing about the heck yes and the heck no, um, when you look at that, like, how do you start looking at when you start with the like, what are non-negotiables? Like, how do you even figure out what that is? Because it can be super confusing. This is my heck yeah, this is my heck no, but you gotta take it back and go, well, wait a second, what am I starting with, and what are those non-negotiables?
And I think I'm even going to peel back the onion a little bit further, Kim,
Yes.
and to say, why is it important?
Ooh, nice.
Right? Why is it important for us to set our non-negotiables, to have clear boundaries, and another word might be to have clear standards on how we expect others to treat us and how we want to be treating ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's been about because I haven't done it 100%, right? In fact, I learned how about this from doing it the opposite. Being a corporate warrior and working 60 to 80 hours a week and saying yes, yes, yes when I meant no, and realizing that it was just the road to burnout, right? I wasn't taking care of my health and well-being.
Mm-hmm.
What? At the expense of having prestige and having money, but I wasn't able to do anything with it because I was exhausted. I was tanked. So focusing on non-negotiables, it
Mm-hmm.
helps us to basically realize that our needs matter. And I know you've heard that before, but
Mm-hmm.
that ability to just say my opinions matter, my beliefs, my expectations, and it allows us to give from a full cup. So if I know you're a mom, I'm a mom, so you can imagine, right? Raising kids and they're always pushing the limits, right? And so training them what's acceptable. So I remember saying, okay, so we go to bed by 9 o'clock. Well, actually, they went to sleep by 8, but I was like, okay, if you read until 9, that's fine. And you're not able to come into mommy and daddy's room until 6 or 7, 8 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
So, like, okay, setting clear boundaries. Now, people are going to push them because that's what people do. I don't know why we do that, but and so it's a matter of is having a guilt first, taking a breath, having a guilt-free zone, and saying, now remember this is what we agreed to, and then coming back
Yeah.
to it time and time again.
So I like what you're saying is that what rather than starting with what are the non-negotiables, why do we have them? Because if we start from that why, then you have kind of this foundation of I have a reason. So the why, I mean, I was just thinking of that when you're talking about having kids go to bed 8, 9. Why? Well, it's good for them to have a routine, but it's also good for mom to have space, to like take a bath, to read a book, to whatever. So the why, if the why is big enough, then we're going to follow through on those boundaries, those non-negotiables, because we have a strong why. Am I getting it?
Yes, the one thing I want to add to this,
Mm-hmm.
I know we've all experienced this, is when we don't set clear boundaries and we allow somebody to walk all over us, then we get resentful. And then we
Mm-hmm.
might be considered bitchy, right? And heck, if and I did this in my first marriage where I don't think I did a really great job of saying where my boundaries were. And so, and okay, I was in relationship with a narcissist, but and so they don't like boundaries anyway. But so I was constantly in this state of being pissed off. And then he'd go, "Well, why are you so angry?" And I'd go, "Oh, like he's not a mind reader, right? He didn't know what I was needing, which is regular exercise and sleep and coverage for the kids and etc." So that's another reason why we set clear boundaries and have standards. But what I found with this is really interesting to me,
Mm-hmm.
actually. I
Mm-hmm.
talk to a lot of women's groups and I can ask them, so what are you needing? And how can you begin to ask for that? And often they don't even know what they need because they haven't paused long enough. Yeah, I see you're shaking your head.
Well, that if we don't know why we're doing it, like the why to me kind of spells out the need. Don't you think? Like if my why is that I want to read a book after, by myself, I want to have a bath by myself, I want to watch TV by myself, then putting the kids to bed between 8 and 9 gives me these other things that I want. So my why sets everything in motion. But we got to first then so that's fascinating. So it's like even backing up before that, like I've got to find a way to get to my why. Because a lot of us, I notice with people, mommies especially, it's like, what do you need? And they look at me, that puppy dog, like, huh? That blank face, like, I don't even know what that means, right? So it even takes it back further to go, I got to start thinking about or kind of imagining what it is I want for myself.
And so that's the process that I take women
Mhm.
through. My self-love pathway to prosperity is really first dialing in what is their blueprint vision? What is it they want to create? What lights them up? And often, interestingly enough, that clarity comes from um, things bumping up against what they don't want. So everything informs what you do want. I'll give you an example. So there came a point recently where I was like, I am not willing to gain any more weight. I was a
Mhm.
caregiver for my mom. She passed last year.
Mhm.
And at age 60 now, the weight doesn't just come off like it used to. So
Mhm.
there was a line in the sand where I was like, okay, so what do I need to do for myself
Mhm.
in order to, like I got really clear. That
Mhm.
means I'm exercising on a daily basis, even
Mhm.
if it's just taking a walk out, down to the beach, or it's eating more healthy, right? And not that I was eating all
Yeah.
that bad in the first place, and being able to share that with my family, like so it helps support me with this. I'm going to get up a little bit earlier. I might stay out a little bit later to work out. I'm going to be eating more vegetables. I need to eat by 7 because I'm doing intermittent fasting.
Mhm.
But yeah, asking for what we need is really, but we have to be able to pause. And if you're in a state of, let's call it your brain is you know this because you
Yeah.
do therapy. If your
Yeah.
brain is taken offline,
Yeah.
can't even begin to think clearly like what it is that you need. So values and vision, and I even take it one step further in the work
Mhm.
that I do. I integrate human design. Are you
Mhm.
familiar with that?
Not really. Why don't you describe what it is?
Yeah, so I actually bring in an outside practitioner to help. women understand how they're designed energetically. So
Mhm.
for example, I'm a manifester. I'm not meant to be a generator. And what that means is I'm a visionary.
Mm.
If I attempt to do too much, if I'm not paying attention to my body, my energy system, then I can actually go into overwhelm really easily.
Mhm.
And I'm also what they call a ruler cross, which means I know that it's my job not to ask, but to inform people what it is that I'm doing. So not asking for permission necessarily from my husband or those around me, but saying, this is what I'm doing. I'm leaving by 6 o'clock. Um, you're going with me or you're not going with me, that kind of a.
Yeah. It's interesting because it reminds me of like beginning to notice what the human design idea is like, what do I need and how do I need to experience it? And I find that interesting because I think we get a lot of clues. And I think we got that a lot like over the pandemic time
Mhm.
because of everything being shut down. And like, what is it I really need and what is it I really want? And what do I start embracing? Like, what is my, like that constitution thing? Like, what is the way my body needs to work to make things go, or my emotions need to work to make things go for myself? And that we've had a lot of more introspection on that, but then following through on that and making it happen can be tough. And that's where the boundaries, I think, come in and like determining, like, and so what are my non negotiables? I like what you said. I'm eating by 7 because it works best with my body. My body feels better when I do it this way. I'm going to do that. Rock on, you do that. My body works better when I have more movement, more exercise. Do that. Right. And so you begin to start gathering up these kind of wellness tools, really, and like, what are they going to be? And then you have to start following through and doing them. So,
That's the tough part.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So these are, so it's knowing what you want. Then I think what we're saying is that knowing what you want then creates the opportunity, if we so choose, to make boundaries around it.
Yeah, and it's really signaling to yourself that you're worthy of
Mm.
asking for what you need.
Hmm.
I mean, you can feel that, right?
I can
When
feel it.
somebody drives me just nutty. I have a girlfriend, I'll say, okay, let's get together. And she goes, well, I don't know, it's this wishy-washy kind of thing. And I just want her to say, so when are you available? Are you so is it Monday?
Yeah.
Is it Tuesday? Well, what works for you? I'm not asking that. I'm asking for, so it's standing in your power
Mm.
and knowing that your words have power, your needs matter. That I actually have a diagram and I got this from Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Hmm.
but I actually started seeing it as interlocking pieces. And I'll explain to you what I'm going to say. So
Okay.
the basic needs, some of them are, and I'll just kind of, health and well-being,
Hmm.
leisure time, having a sense of self-esteem, a sense of purpose and connection, and a sense of security and autonomy.
Hmm.
So I find that they're actually interlocking. So when I think about like I have a need for sleep, which I didn't actually, I'll say it, I thought it was a negotiable before. I thought I could get by with 6 hours of sleep,
Yes.
right? Years ago when I was a corporate
Yes.
warrior and then when I was a mom, because I find that if I'm able to take care of that need, then it helps me to be able to think more clearly so I can have a greater sense of self-worth. And then I'm able to feel better about my purpose, right? I'm able to assert that if it's about women's empowerment, I'm a heck yes. And it helps me to have deeper connections. So they're all interlocking that when we get clear in one area, it helps us to get clear in the other areas as well.
It's true. And that they, you got to have them start building with each other, interlocking in each other to get where you want to go. And I like that. And So how do you, so we've talked about non-negotiables, we talked about the why. And I wonder, like, how do you start setting boundaries? Like, that thing you said about with the kids, like 8 o'clock, but I know but then I know it turns out to nine because of reading a book or whatever, but you're in bed at 8 o'clock, children, you're doing their thing. How do you find that works because it's really easier said than done. Set boundaries is like, yeah, and how do you do that? Do you have ideas for that?
You. So first of all, it's asking yourself, what drains me? So like I was saying, that often the contrast provides. So let's say, oh, I'm just trying to figure out, I'll use the career purpose thing, for example. So when I was in corporate, I realized that it was so draining to work with a misogynistic corporate culture.
Mm,
I rose to the ranks of VP. I found that really I didn't feel like I had a deep sense of connection with the other board members because it was a different environment. It was a competitive environment, right? Rather than collaborative environment.
yeah.
What drains you? What energizes you? Oh, it really energizes me to have interactions with people where we're supportive, where we're clear communicators and we have a vision going forward and we're willing to work together. And then what am I no longer willing to tolerate? So there came a point that I basically tanked my adrenals, and then I was no longer able to function, to think very clearly, right? Foggy mind, and my energy was tanked. So but I put myself in that position, right? By not standing up for what I needed. And
Yeah.
nobody going to take care of me, right? I think we also have that misnomer that everybody else is looking out for our best interest, where that is not always the case, or frequently is not the case.
Well, right. And if they are, they're doing it like you were talking about your friend who said, well, what do you want to do? It's like, I literally am asking you what you wanted. Like, I want to have this be kind of a two-way street. So you make a good point. Like, nobody else is going to look out for you and nobody else is going to do that. So it's like, I wrote down the question. So, what drains me? What energizes me? And what am I not willing to tolerate? Are great opportunities um to get really clear on what it is, and that leads to like that heck yes, like yes, 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 this is. And I think that thing of not willing to tolerate can really lead us to no, 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 I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to even our values. So I think of an interaction with somebody I was dating. I'm now remarried, but he had made a really disparaging comment about my weight. And I was like, no, I'm not, I'm not putting up with this. You have 5 minutes to leave. And he goes, well, what about unconditional love? And I go, you're out of here. Let me be clear. You have
Yes.
5 minutes to pick up your stuff and leave because it was very clear to me that I wasn't going to put up with somebody else's opinion of what I was supposed to drop 10 pounds to be beautiful. And I already know that, I'll call it a catch, somebody that he should have been really thrilled to be with. So I was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
put up but that was a great example where I used direct and clear language. And if it's about what I was willing to do, right?
It was also about yours. Like, it was interesting that, that he would kind of come at you. What about self-love? It's like, yes, this is self-love. What I'm doing right now, no, like my weight, my body is not up for negotiation.
Right.
Done. Like, I'm done. You can leave. And that's how much I love myself is I'm willing to say no that's what did you say earlier? It's like what am I not willing to tolerate? I'm not willing to tolerate somebody who is focused on my size. I mean, my God, we all have enough negative things about ourselves to begin with. I don't need anybody else feed me anything else. Let's let that go, and you need to leave.
And we talk about having the direct language. So of course that wasn't the end of it, right? He would not, he's like, oh, can we give it a next second try? No, I'm not willing to discuss this. Right. So that was number two. That was, affirmative language. Or he's like, well, we can just get together and we could discuss it. That doesn't work for me. So those are three terms, I'm available for this. I'm not comfortable with this. And
Yeah.
that doesn't work for me.
Well, it's one of those things where I love this. I mean, seriously, how many times have we been able to say no to something to where somebody does something, says something very offensive and go, yeah, that doesn't work for me. I- I'm I'm willing to say no more. And that's a really hard line to draw, and that kind of what am I not willing to tolerate? I'm not willing to tolerate somebody saying something about me that's negative or having this opinion or needing me to change. I'm not willing to do that, and I'm not willing to have, especially the part about being in partnership or being in a dating relationship. That's not where I want to go. That's not what I want to do.
Yeah. And when we're talking about this too, I think what you're pointing to is when we question ourselves,
Mhm.
is like the guilt maybe, or the of standing up for ourselves, because we as women have been trained to think that we're just supposed to be nice, we're supposed to be, roll over and say yes or whatever. And so that ability for us to breathe in to our self-worth, and I
Yeah.
actually will take right underneath my breast is like that solar plexus, and I will
Yes.
put my hands there and I will go, yes, this is what's right for me, right? So checking in
Yeah.
with the body, knowing that that's my truth. And it doesn't have to land for them. It's important that I stand up for myself. It's almost like I'm picturing this like adulting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Again, we're taking care of our needs. We're asking for what we need. We're not acting as a child that's assuming that the parent is going to take care of them.
Hmm.
And we're actually reaffirming for ourselves or reparenting ourselves that we are worthy to ask for what we need.
What's interesting also is that that part about what I'm not willing to tolerate is the thing that I think women are often trained in is we're supposed to accept somebody where they are and they'll change. They'll change.
They generally don't.
And they don't when they have some deep-seated idea about weight and body image and all that. It's like, yeah, and that doesn't go away, or that's just not something I want to live with, having somebody talk negatively or even have a negative thought about my body. It's it's really important. And I find so how was it, Carrie, how was it to stand in that? How did that feel for you? Did you waver? Because like to me, that's mind blowing. It sounds so big to me to just say, no, I'm done. You can go. I don't invite in men in my life to be in relationship with who talk to me that way. Like, how was that for you to do that?
It was so empowering. And so
Uh,
here's the beauty in it.
mm,
What if it's a gift that
mm,
we set these clear boundaries? So
mm.
I knew that he wasn't the right person for me. And yet I was in this, I don't know what you want to call it. I was in the relationship and I was thinking, oh, but there's so many, I was talking myself into it, right? So
Yes.
it was a gift that he gave me, and it was a gift I gave to myself. Of course, I didn't write him to say thank you for being an ass, but but it really was a
Right.
gift, because
Right.
that same month, or the month after I set that clear boundaries, and I basically wrote out something that says, calling in my love. These are my expectations. These are my needs. That my love, my second husband showed up,
Yeah.
because I was clear that this is what I desire. This is what I need. And so it's interesting how that works, right? When
I
you're
find that happens more often than not is when I set a clear boundary really in my and like I set a clear boundary, no, 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 and you weed out the no's, the heck yes just shows up. And it might be not in the time I think it does, but it shows up. And I think that's the value. One of the values of clear boundaries is that you're opening yourself up to what's a heck yes.
So how do you know what your heck yes is? I'm curious.
Wow, gosh, how do I know what my heck yes is? I know it's a heck yes. It's a lot of times it's based on how I feel. And if it's a feeling of love and joy and peace,
Yeah.
yes. That's if there's any, see, the thing about what that guy did is, and I'm going to choose to believe that you gave him a gift, that having you say no to him about how he can talk to you, I am hopeful that he might do some reflection. So I'm going to hold that for him for his future. But what I go towards is like, that I would feel uncomfortable with somebody saying that to me, and like that wouldn't feel good, rather than if I'm with somebody who's loving to me and peace, and I feel peaceful and I feel joy. It's like, oh yes. So for me it's more like the heck yes comes from that feeling of, oh yeah, that feels good.
Mhm.
And I think, and that's what I think more of, is that the yeses are about, this feels good, it feels joy filled,
Mhm.
peaceful. Those two are my big words. And I don't like to go with the happy part, because I think joy and peace are beyond. They exist beyond the happy. So that's what I go for, is more, how is it feeling for me? And that's when I know it's a heck yes.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to know is like in our body,
Mhm.
how we know uh, when, because like I said, I've had a history of being around narcissists and they can twist it so that it's just like, oh, maybe you have a wrong perception, right? And so in order to stand in our power, I mean, that's like, that's not something that you can negotiate. You're like, no, that doesn't feel right to me, right? Because
Yeah, and it's hard to do that in the midst of somebody then telling you, other people's mental health presentations, the things that they do can make it where there's a lot of pushback on my heck yes. It's like there's the pushback, or my no is like the pushback. And that's why I thought it was interesting that you were able to stay in your intention of what will I not tolerate. And you were able to say, no, I won't tolerate this. No, it doesn't matter what you think. No, because you were so clear on your inner purpose, your inner guidance, and also your why, of why you're doing what you're doing and how you want to feel, because that doesn't feel good to be talked to like that.
I just had a light bulb moment too. And it's not and I think he may have unwittingly uh, touched on one of my empowerment things. So
Hmm.
that we as women, I feel like maybe we've been expected to be skinny minis because that that maybe we're not seen as powerful or something. So I don't know. It's been one of my feminist things maybe that if he's
Yeah.
when he stomped on it, like your opinion of me is not who I who I know myself to be.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot on this podcast before, about, really, we call it an anti-diet revolution, peace with food, peace with your body. And it's really about accepting your body wherever it is, even if you have an image of something else that you want. But like, the way I am right now is the way I am right now. And I'm not going to starve myself to get to be where you think I should be, because it's always a moving target. The end point is always moving, and I don't want to live like that. Like, you got to love me the way that I am, and that's what I expect, and that's what I hear you saying to him. And so I love this as an example of a really um heck no to the guy and how he was acting, which in turn led to a heck yes of, I'm going to love myself no matter what. I'm going to be in love with me. And that was such a great example of it. And it's hard to do. It's
Yeah.
hard to do. I'm going to
Yeah.
honor this for you, Carrie. Like, that's, a lot of us would have a hard time, like, dang, good for you. I love that story. I think it's very empowering.
And I just want to say, bring it back to, how I normally help women in their career is because it's like the boiling frog syndrome, which means that, right, you've probably
Yes.
heard this before.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna give you a picture of it. So
Yeah.
if you throw a frog into boiling water, it's going to jump out. But if the water just gets warmer and warmer and warmer, and then it heats up too much, the frog can't even get out of the hot water. So I think that's what happens in our work situations too, and possibly our relationships,
Yes.
is we become used to a certain behavior. So if we have that point where we're like, oh, that's hot water, I'm not going to jump into that.
Yeah.
And most often it's based on what, and this is the path I ask women too, is tell me about a time that was a struggle for you and what did you learn from it? So rather than it being a shame moment,
Mm-hmm.
it was their heroine moment. It was the
Mm-hmm.
moment of transformation where they said, I've written this line in the sand and no more.
Yeah. I love that. That's so cool. So I want to know, you said this interesting thing in when you talked to me about what you wanted to talk about today, and you said this, that setting clear boundaries creates more time for you. I thought that was excellent, and I really want to hear more about that because I think that's an interesting concept. Clear boundaries create more time for me. How does that happen?
Think about it. If you have no idea what's important to you, you're going to say yes to whatever anybody asks you, right?
Mhm.
I'll give you an example. I was supposed to go to a networking event tonight, and I got really clear, like this is the 1 year anniversary of my mom passing. And I know that my team is more than capable of running the show while I'm not able to be there. And I thought, no. I'm gonna have some time for me to grieve tonight because that's what I need for myself. So I could have guilted myself into saying, well, I should be there. And that's often a case too, shooting on yourself. Like I
Yes.
should do this, I should
Hmm.
volunteer, I should do more,
Hmm.
so many things. But when we should on ourselves, we're not coming from a place of joy. What you were talking about, that peace, love,
Yes.
joy, that are the indicators to you that this is something that I'm meant to do. So, and I'll give you another example. I was looking at a business opportunity recently, and I went, yeah, I can make a lot of money doing that. But I checked in with myself, and in other words, I was spending cycles, time, effort thinking about it and evaluating it and spending hours. I mean, I've spent 2 full days looking at this business opportunity. And I should have asked myself at the beginning, does this meet my vision blueprint and my values? I should have asked that.
Yeah.
But some of it I wouldn't have known until I went there. But you can save huge amounts of time, and you can just say no, no, thank you. Yes, that's like a complete sentence.
Yeah.
You don't need to explain. But I think we as women take on, because we're often part of the sandwich generation, we take on so much more than we
Hmm.
need. And so when you get clear what's in your wheelhouse, what's
Hmm.
and either delegate it to somebody else, say
Hmm.
no, available. Do you need help with finding the resources that you need?
Yeah.
It's really empowering.
It's interesting because it reminds me of the idea that when I'm really in alignment with what I'm doing, I have more energy, like just in general, because it's not pulling away from myself. And so I have more energy when it's in alignment. The other thing I think about is the idea that if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. A
Yes,
maybe is a no. They're all no's
yes,
until I'm a full throttled yes, I'm in. Everything else is a no until it's an absolute yes. And that's what
yes.
I found works really the best is that it's often just more no's, please, more no's.
You brought in something else that was really interesting that I really want to underline, that when you are in your joy space,
Hmm.
I mean, time feels magical. It feels more connected. And whether it's to source or to each other or to something bigger than you, to a greater sense of purpose, um, you really feel that like your time expands in a beautiful way, right? So that's why I like to say it's more than a paycheck when you feel joy and purpose in what you're doing. And that's your
Well,
heck yeah.
yes. It just brings more. It brings more energy and more vibrancy, and so I get it. So the boundaries do create more time for me, but it creates more energy for me. It creates a lot more for me. So if that's what I want, then I have to live more in the where's the no and where's the yes.
And I like to say that we all live with the same 168 hours in a week.
Yeah.
And it's knowing how we want to spend those, because people often don't come to the end of their life and they say, "Oh, I wish I would have um, done more volunteer work, or even I wish I would have worked." They generally come to the end of their life and they say, "I wish that I would have spent more time with my loved ones." So when we get on our boundaries and we set those clear boundaries so that people don't have to be a mind reader when they're working with us. I
Yeah.
think really appreciate, I'm finding this in my second marriage. He really appreciates the fact that I communicate what my needs are. And then we can have a negotiation, right? Um, like, okay, so you need to eat by 7. Well, tonight, can we go till 7:15? Sure. That I'm like, that's no big deal. But at least there's an
Right.
expect or a groundwork that you don't have to. I'm just realizing this again. You don't have to rethink it, it's like that
Yeah.
takes mental effort as well, right? So
Mhm.
I want to say that too. It creates more spaciousness.
Yeah, and I think we could have a whole nother podcast on boundaries and other people and like how to manage that idea of like I have boundaries and then you have boundaries and what happens when they bump up against each other. So what you're talking about with your husband is like we have to negotiate. We have to where is mine a strong heck yes, like I'm not moving off of it kind of thing. It's different. It's different in relationship than when you're dating because dating it's a little bit more you can kind of say I'm done by but your children, your family members, your spouse, close friends, like it's that's a whole nother thing. We'll have to look at that for a whole nother time.
Oh, that's juicy, by the
Isn't that
way.
juicy? Because dang, people want to know that I talk a lot in my therapy with people around communication, just boundaries, and then how do I communicate all that? It can be really tough. You can set the boundaries, but then how do I say it? Whole nother thing we should get into another day, Carrie.
And I have some thoughts about it because I used to live intentional community.
Oh
So I
gosh.
was one of the members and I trained the community to do a clearing process that helps us to address where there's two different sides. I'll call it two different views.
Mm-hmm.
What I found, interestingly enough, when people would have this conversation, there was another depth of intimacy with the people who were willing to invest the time in having a conversation.
Wow, that sounds powerful. So the last thing I always like to ask is how do you, Carrie Helms, how do you feed your soul?
Hmm. Well, number one is being in nature. So these are the Redwood Grove that's right up the road from me. I find that nature is an inspiration for me. It also helps me, whether I'm happy or I'm sad, it really helps to give me messages. So I'll give you an example. The other day, I just walked outside in between calls, and there was this buzzy little bee, and it was pollinating the different flowers. And I was like, oh, wow, that I don't know, it just gave me a great sense of joy. But it also helped me remember just how we cross pollinate in our own lives, right? How
Ooh, yeah.
bring this person together and this organization together so that they create new magic.
Cross-pollination. I love that with the bees. Um, that's super good. I like that. The idea of nature feeding your soul is like you get to take a deep breath. You walk on the ground, you get some sunlight, you get the wind and just all of the area. I mean, talk about a joy-filled experience. I love that. I resonate with that, and I love that idea of feeding your soul through time in nature. Very good. Thank you for that. That's something we all can live with more. So, Carrie, tell us what you have something to offer for everybody. How can people get a hold of you? What's something you'd like to give to them? I want to make sure that everybody can get in contact with you, and we will have all of the links in the show notes, so everybody can get them that way. But I'd love to have them hear from you firsthand.
Beautiful. Thank you. So my company name is Keys to Empowerment. Self-love pathway to prosperity is just one of the programs I developed. But I think what I'd like to give or gift to your listeners is something that I created called Momentum Magic. And the reason why is because it has a piece of this non-negotiables in there. So it's a really
Mm.
about unlocking time, energy, and abundance. It allows people to have the clarity to focus on what's most important, to transform those areas of fear and self-doubt so they can set clearer boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
how they inspired action to move forward.
Wow.
So it's in 5 different parts. It's like how to unlock 5+ hours in the week and how to activate abundance. So what
Wow.
is abundance, right? That bigger picture of like living with joy and peace and so on, and mindset mastery, and taming the saboteurs that get in the way, that tell us that we're
Yes.
bad, we're wrong,
Yeah.
that, yeah, and judge us and push us,
Yeah.
and how to stop the burnout. So that's all, I think, pieces that we've been talking about today anyway.
Love it. Oh my God, that sounds like a lot. Thank you so much. And we will link it in the notes. We'll make sure everybody gets access to it. That is so good. Carrie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. This has been so good, so juicy. And I want to thank you for being with us. And we'll do another day and we'll talk about boundaries with other people, how to talk it through, because I think that will be very beneficial. So thank you for being with us. And I look forward to talking with you later.
Well, Kim, I just so appreciate you showing up in the world the way you do, and the way that you basically you plug your listeners into these deeper topics so
Mm.
that we can really think more empowered and more I call it self-love. That's really what it is. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today and ask
Thank
such
you.
thought-provoking questions.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll see you later, everyone. Bye, Carrie.